At the conclusion of today's meeting, ReneGallant will assume the office of President of this Society, and I'm very pleased to ask him to step forward and provide his remarks to you now.
In April, I had the very good fortune of being able to be on a lengthy vacation with my family. We went to Queensland, Australia to visit my daughter Samantha, who's completing her PhD in marine science. And while we were there, I had a conversation with my youngest son, Ben. He's in grade 7. I wanted to ask him, what does he think he will do with his life when he is an adult? What career does he see for himself? His sister's doing something really amazing. And I do want him to understand that anything is possible when you put your mind to it. In fact, I really do hope he sees that a career in law can be rewarding in very many ways. And Ben thought that if he couldn't be a professional football player, he'd like to be a movie producer or maybe even a director. Why not a lawyer, like me, I said. And Ben responded, I don't want to have to work on my vacations. I understand, I said, and I looked back down at my iPad and I continued to answer my email. Good morning, President Daly, my colleagues on Bar Council, Executive Director Darrell, and other members of the Society staff, my fellow lawyers. I'm going to come back to the topic of Australia, but first let me express my sincere gratitude for the opportunity to be here today and for the opportunity to accept the role of President of the Nova Scotia Barristers Society. This is a humbling experience, standing before you and taking on the role of President of the Society. I have greatly appreciated the warm wishes and support that so many of you have shown to me, and I'm looking forward to working with you over the next year. I will need your continued advice, your input, and your support in the year ahead, and I will seek it out actively. You have my commitment. I will always be available to you to discuss the Society's work and what is happening in your firm or in your practice. The members of Council and a few regulatory lawyers in Halifax and a number of partners at the large law firms here know me well, but I think I probably need to tell the rest of you a bit about myself. I currently work here in Halifax as the Vice President, Legal and Regulatory Affairs with Emera, Newfoundland and Labrador. I articled to Rod Bergar with Patterson Kitts, as it then was, and I stayed on at that firm as it became Patterson Palmer Hunt Murphy. I later found myself in the role of the first General Counsel to the Halifax Regional School Board, which I held for almost 5 years. After a return to private practice, I joined Nova Scotia Power as Regulatory Counsel and later Vice President of Regulatory Affairs until late last year. I was the lead lawyer for every Nova Scotia Power rate application since 2007. As my dry cleaning lady says, "You're the bad guy." I was able to help the Bar Society with its governance review of council composition, which saw council reduced in size from 36 to 21 members. And then I led the council task force on committees, which reorganized the volunteer committees that support the work of council and of the executive director. I have a keen interest in governance. The loss of my mother to cancer when she was only 42 and I was only 12 motivated me to try to make a difference in cancer control. And because of that experience, for most of my adult life, I volunteered for the Canadian Cancer Society in various roles and became the national president, chairing the board of directors of that organization. I'm currently the chair of the Governance and Nominating Committee of the Canadian Partnership Against Cancer, which is a national organization dedicated to best practices in cancer control and research. I've helped many large organizations manage through change throughout my volunteer and professional life, and I'm very pleased to be able to provide leadership to our profession here in Nova Scotia. I want to echo Tim's words of thanks to the outgoing members of council, Lynn, Aaron, Alita, Candy, David, and George. Your contributions to the work of the Society have been many, and I will miss each of you as we continue to work to implement the decisions that we've been making together over the past 2 years. A hearty welcome to our new members of council, elected earlier this year. Congratulations on letting your name stand for election. I'm looking forward to working together, and we do have much work to do. I'm pleased to announce that Mr. Dick Rafuse, QC, has accepted the role of Honorary President of the Society during my term as President. Dick has been a source of guidance and energy for me from the beginning of my career. He taught me about the importance of client service and about our duty to contribute to the profession and to our community. Talk of change is everywhere, and maybe that has always been the case. But in terms of the legal profession, talk of change has never been louder or more widespread. But let me tell you, talking is not good enough. The time for action has arrived. Earlier this week, the Canadian Bar Association said that lawyers in Canada are experiencing, quote, an unprecedented wave of transformative change, end quote. Over the past several years, there's been a great deal of change at the Barristers Society, but I don't think anyone would yet suggest that the change has been transformative. We have, however, reduced the size of council, streamlined our operations, and focused the organization more precisely on our purpose, to uphold and protect the public interest in the practice of law. And as you've heard today, consequently, we've also been able to manage our budget and lower net practicing fees for 3 consecutive years. This year, Council established a new strategic plan for the Society, one that calls for action and that brings sharp focus to the most important work facing our profession. We have 2 strategic priorities. First, transforming regulation and governance in the public interest. And second, enhancing access to legal services and the justice system for all Nova Scotians. Fundamentally, and in the face of all of the change that's happening around us, we haven't really changed much in the way that we regulate lawyers. The Barrister Society has always regulated the conduct of individual lawyers, those who practice alone or with other lawyers in a firm. The practice paradigm has been that of a private practitioner who essentially hangs out a shingle and serves the public. Of course, we pay attention to areas of practice like criminal law, real estate, commercial law, so on. And as the numbers have grown, for lawyers working in the largest of law firms, in government, in legal aid, or for practitioners like me who work inside a corporate entity, we have steadfastly continued to apply the same rules in the same manner. After all, a lawyer is a lawyer and a firm is a firm. Isn't that right? Today, you have a clear and present example of the changes happening in our profession. I am the first in-house counsel to lead the Society. Your other officers include 2 great lawyers and wonderful people, Tilly Pillay, a senior government lawyer, and Jill Perry, a lead lawyer with the Nova Scotia Legal Aid. For the first time in the history of the organization, and I suspect in any law society in Canada, none of the officers are in private practice. Let me first assure you that is not going to diminish the voice of the private practitioners on the Society, on council, or on the executive. But it does speak to the changes that are happening in our profession. Let me take you back now to my visit to Australia. Many of you will be aware that Australian lawyers do not have the privilege of self-governance. And the same thing has happened in the UK. And as far as I know, lawyers in Australia and in the UK are still making money, and the public in those countries are still struggling with access to justice issues. But here's why I told you the story about the conversation with my son in Australia. Ben was right about the practice of law. Both myself and my wife Patty, who's a partner in the advocacy group at Stuart McKelvey, worked almost every morning of our vacation. I'm not complaining. We got up, we had coffee, we went for a walk on the beach. But then we checked our email and worked for our clients for an hour or two. It helped us feel better about being away for so long, knowing that we could continue to oversee that the work back home was meeting the needs of our clients. And technology enabled that. It enabled it for us in a way that probably wasn't possible even just a few years ago. In fact, our clients might not even have known we were away if we hadn't told them. Well, so what? Right? Good for us. We had a nice vacation. But here's the rub. Your clients, right now, have the ability to obtain legal services from someone else. And not someone just in your hometown, but someone in Australia, in the UK, in India, in the United States, even in Toronto. And if you have a practice in Kentville or New Glasgow or Sydney, and you're worried about Halifax lawyers coming to town to service your clients, you are not thinking broadly enough. I work for a pretty big company, and currently I work with external counsel in St. John's, Toronto, Calgary, Washington, among many other locations. Websites are being established every day that provide legal information and legal service to your clients. And no matter what kind of practice you may have or where you live, your clients, the people you serve, can come into your office with choices and information available to them, not provided by you, like never before. And these options are just going to keep expanding. Clients are no longer choosing their legal service providers just because of expertise or personal connections. Clients are obtaining lawyers and legal services wherever and whenever they can and they want, because they can. Obviously, there have been lots of societal changes and much change in how and where lawyers practice and why people need lawyers. But I suggest that our method of regulating lawyers has not evolved on pace with the advancement of technology or of government, civil, and commercial interactions. The world keeps getting more complex, and in many ways it becomes smaller with every advance in technology. This increased complexity needs to be met with a regulatory regime that supports a lawyer's fundamental duty of loyalty, of confidentiality, and integrity. What we need is a pragmatic approach to professional regulation with an eye toward true innovation. And this is the focus of our first strategic priority: transforming regulation and governance in the public interest. I should say, I don't believe that self-regulation in Nova Scotia is threatened by changes in the world around us. What I'm suggesting is that we have the ability as an organization and a profession to recognize that changes are happening and to adapt to those changes for the good of our profession and in the interest of our clients. As the regulator of the profession, and I respectfully suggest as leaders of your firms and organizations, together we have a responsibility to examine and challenge the reasons why we resist change rather than reach for the opportunity. Council of the Barrister Society has no intention of rushing headlong into this change and recklessly adopting new regimes or other rules from other jurisdictions. We have a plan to study and evaluate the feasibility and the options for transforming regulation. We want to focus on outcomes rather than rules, on empowerment rather than obligation, on accountability rather than fault. We will seek out an outcomes-focused approach that reduces the burden of regulation while protecting the public interest. We will promote dialogue and engage the profession and the public in meaningful, transparent, and deliberate conversations. We will understand what is happening across the country and around the world and adopt best practices that are going to work here in Nova Scotia. By transforming regulation, establishing outcomes, knowing what difference we make, we will also be better positioned to deliver results in our second strategic priority. Enhancing access to legal services and the justice system has been an important component of our work for many years. And even though we are doing a lot of great work in this area, and it is great work, We frankly are not able to objectively demonstrate what difference this work is making for our profession or for the public. And that needs to change if we're to maintain a credible leadership role in this area. Council has made a commitment to building effective relationships and focusing on outcomes as we pursue real improvement in access to legal services and the justice system. Our strategic plan has set us on a path, and Council will tread cautiously but with determination. We have a pragmatic approach, and we're determined to seize the opportunities that change presents. And I'm convinced we'll deliver positive results for our profession and for the public. It's up to us together to take advantage of the opportunities that these changes present to us. The Barrister Society needs to be ready. We need to embrace change. I do recognize the inertia of law firms and lawyers. We're reluctant to change unless the risks are very clear and the benefits are certain. Our success in these endeavors will be dependent on leadership from the bar. And by that, I mean leadership from each of you. I believe fervently in our profession. I know that in the face of change, we will make things better by working together. Thank you. Before I finish, I want to take a moment to recognize the remarkable leadership of our president, Tim Daly. Tim has helped guide Council through a series of important decisions and difficult debates during his year as president. You know what these are, I'm sure, because you read In Forum religiously every second Monday night. Where Tim shines, as we all know, is in his public dialogue about depression and mental illness in our profession. Tim has delivered a powerful personal message about the prevalence and importance of this issue within our profession, and everywhere he has spoken, he has touched people with his sincerity and courage. Tim is a role model for the society and for our profession, and I know you join me in thanking Tim for his service. I'm pleased to announce today that Tim has agreed to continue his good work on this important topic. I have asked Tim to serve as a special advisor on mental health awareness to the Barrister Society of Nova Scotia. In this role, Tim will continue to champion the topic of mental health and wellness in our profession. He will be available to you, to lawyers across the province, and I expect across the country as an ambassador of the Society. With Tim's sharp focus to support us, the Society will be better able to deal with the regulatory challenges that are related to mental health in our profession. I've asked Tim to challenge us, challenge Council and the Society whenever he sees ways that we can better support lawyers that are dealing with mental illness in their law practice. Last night, Council met over dinner, and we recognized Tim's contributions and provided him with a recognition gift on behalf of Council and on your behalf. Tim, your leadership has been an inspiration, and we are very pleased you've agreed to continue to be a champion of mental health awareness. Thank you very much for your service.